It was just past 0300 local time when the first radar return appeared on the combat information center display aboard a United States Navy-guided missile destroyer holding station in the eastern approach to the Strait of Hormuz. The contact was small, fast, and hugging the Iranian coastline at a distance of roughly 11 nautical miles. Within 40 seconds, a second return materialized trailing the first by less than a quarter mile, then a third, then a fourth. By the time the watch officer keyed the tactical net to flag the developing picture, 7 distinct surface contacts were accelerating southward in a loose echelon, each one closing the gap toward the internationally recognized shipping lane at speeds exceeding 40 knots. The destroyer Spy 1D radar had already classified them as small craft, likely fast attack boats, and the electronic warfare suite was picking up navigation band emissions consistent with Iranian Revolutionary Guard Navy platforms. Within minutes, the cruiser operating 12 miles to the northwest confirmed the same picture on its own sensors. A carrier strike group, transiting the narrowest choke point on the planet, was being approached by a swarm of armed fast boats in the dead of night. Most of the coverage that followed fixated on the confrontation itself, the warning shots, the defensive response, the dramatic footage released hours later. But the confrontation was never the real story. The real story was what was already in position before the first boat left its berth, and why the geometry that night looked nothing like what most people assumed. The public narrative was straightforward. Iranian fast boats, likely operated by the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy, harassed or directly threatened United States warships transiting the Strait of Hormuz, and the Navy responded with lethal force, destroying several of the attacking craft. In the hours afterward, satellite imagery showed burning wreckage drifting near the traffic separation scheme, and official statements from United States Central Command confirmed the engagement. Commentary predictably focused on Iranian provocation, American firepower, and a familiar cycle of tension in the Persian Gulf. But that interpretation treats the event as a single confrontation, a flash of violence in a contested waterway. It misses the architecture underneath. It misses the question that anyone inside the fifth-floor planning cells at Naval Forces Central Command would have been asking long before the first boat appeared on radar. The question was never whether the Navy could destroy 7 fast boats. The question was whether the fast boats were the actual threat, or whether they were the visible edge of something designed to draw American defensive systems into a specific posture at a specific moment, inside the most constrained naval operating environment on Earth. To understand why that question matters, you have to understand geography. The Strait of Hormuz is roughly 21 nautical miles wide at its narrowest point. The navigable shipping lanes compress that to roughly 6 miles. Any warship transiting the strait is operating within easy range of shore-based anti-ship cruise missiles on the Iranian side, short-range ballistic missiles pre-positioned in hardened sites along the coast, and an elaborate network of surveillance radars, coastal defense systems, and communications nodes that give Iranian forces near real-time awareness of every vessel moving through the passage. The U.S. Navy knows this. Every transit through Hormuz is a calculated risk, planned days in advance, supported by intelligence preparation of the battle space, satellite overflight schedules, electronic warfare coverage, and airborne early warning from E-2D Hawkeyes cycling overhead at 25,000 feet. The carrier strike group in question likely consisted of a Nimitz-class aircraft carrier displacing over 100,000 tons, at least one Ticonderoga-class guided missile cruiser equipped with the Aegis combat system, 2 or more Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, a fast combat support ship, and possibly a Los Angeles or Virginia-class submarine operating unseen somewhere in the approach. The destroyer that first detected the incoming contacts was almost certainly stationed as a forward picket. Its role provide early warning and initial defense for the high-value unit behind it. That destroyer carries 96 vertical launch cells, each loaded with a mix of standard missiles for air defense, Tomahawk land attack cruise missiles, and Evolved Sea Sparrow missiles for close-in threats. Its 5-inch gun can engage surface targets at ranges exceeding 13 nautical miles. Its Phalanx close-in weapon system can shred incoming missiles or small craft at short range with a burst of tungsten penetrator rounds at a rate of 4,500 per minute. On paper, the firepower available to deal with 7 fast boats was overwhelming, and that is precisely the part of the equation that obscures what was actually happening. The IRGCN Fast Attack Fleet is not a conventional navy. It does not operate destroyers or frigates. It operates swarm doctrine. Its fleet consists of hundreds of small, fast, expendable craft, many of them armed with anti-ship cruise missiles, rocket launchers, heavy machine guns, or configured to carry naval mines. The boats themselves cost almost nothing relative to the systems designed to stop them. A single Bagamar-type fast attack craft, loaded with a C-802 variant anti-ship missile, represents an investment perhaps $2 to $3 million. The standard missile fire to defend against that missile costs somewhere between $2 and $4 million per round. The evolved Sea Sparrow, designed for exactly this kind of close-in engagement, runs over $2 million. The math is uncomfortable. In a sustained swarm engagement, the cost-exchange ratio favors the attacker by an enormous margin, and cost is not even the primary issue. Magazine depth is. That destroyer with 96 cells cannot reload at sea under fire. Once those cells are empty, the ship's primary air and missile defense capability is gone. The Phalanx system carries roughly 1,500 rounds in its drum. At its rate of fire, that is approximately 20 seconds of sustained engagement. Reload time is not trivial. Against a saturation attack involving dozens of inbound threats, arriving simultaneously from multiple vectors, the math shifts from uncomfortable to existential. The 7 boats detected that night were not a decisive force. They were a probe. The real question was how many more were staged behind them, positioned in coves and harbors along the Iranian coastline, waiting to see how the American formation reacted. This is where the visible layer of the engagement starts to peel apart. The Navy did not simply respond to 7 fast boats with overwhelming firepower. The response was shaped by what the strike group already knew about the layered threat environment surrounding it. Intelligence assessments in the days before transit would have mapped Iranian coastal battery positions, tracked IRGCN patrol patterns, identified which harbors showed elevated activity, and correlated satellite imagery with signals intelligence to build a picture of Iranian readiness posture. The 2D Hawkeye overhead was not just watching the fast boats. It was watching the entire Iranian coastline, tracking every emitter, every radar activation, every communication burst that might indicate a coordinated second wave or a shore-based missile launch sequence. Somewhere beneath the surface, almost certainly within torpedo range of the Strait's southern approach, a United States submarine was monitoring acoustic signatures and maintaining a firing solution on pre-designated targets. That submarine represents a layer of the American response that never appears in the public narrative. Its presence is never confirmed. Its position is never disclosed. But its capability is the factor that fundamentally alters the Iranian calculus. A single Virginia-class submarine carries 12 vertical launch cells for Tomahawk missiles and 4 torpedo tubes capable of engaging surface targets with Mark 48 ADCAP torpedoes, each one carrying a 650-pound warhead at speeds exceeding 55 knots. Against small craft, those torpedoes are excessive. Against the Iranian frigates or corvettes that might be staged further back as command and control platforms for the swarm, they are decisive. Commander Elise Moreau, the tactical action officer aboard the lead destroyer that night, would have been watching 2 pictures simultaneously. One was the immediate surface threat closing on her ship. The other was a broader intelligence feed, fused from satellite, airborne, subsurface, and electronic warfare sources, that told her whether this was an isolated provocation or the opening move of a coordinated engagement. The engagement unfolded quickly. Standard naval rules of engagement for the 5th Fleet Area of Operations mandate a graduated response. Warnings are issued on bridge-to-bridge radio, International Maritime Channel 16. If the approaching vessels do not alter course, visual and audible warnings follow. Flares, warning shots ahead of the approaching craft. Only when hostile intent is clearly demonstrated, either through weapons activation, sustained closure inside a defined threat perimeter, or actual weapons release, does the engagement shift to lethal response. The timeline from first radar detection to the destruction of the lead boat was likely less than 12 minutes. The 5-inch gun aboard the destroyer can place rounds on a fast-moving surface target with precision-guided munitions at ranges well beyond 10 miles. The helicopter detachment, almost certainly an MH-60 or Seahawk, would have been airborne within minutes, equipped with Hellfire missiles and a forward-looking infrared sensor capable of identifying and tracking individual small craft in total darkness. Reports suggest that at least 3 of the Iranian boats were destroyed by direct naval gunfire, with at least 2 more struck by Hellfire missiles from the airborne helicopter. The remaining craft reversed course at high speed and withdrew toward the Iranian coastline. But the destruction of those boats was not the decisive outcome. The decisive outcome was what did not happen. The Iranian shore batteries did not activate. The coastal defense crew's missile radars remained cold. The second wave of fast boats, which intelligence had assessed as staged in at least 2 harbors within 30 nautical miles, never launched. The reason sits inside the hidden layer of the American response. At the moment the engagement began, a series of electronic warfare actions were initiated that are almost never discussed publicly. The EA-18G Growlers operating from the carrier, positioned in an orbit northwest of the strait, began active jamming across frequency bands associated with Iranian coastal surveillance radars and command and control communications. This did not simply degrade Iranian radar coverage. It severed the real-time link between the IRGCN fastboat commanders and their shore-based headquarters. The boats that were already in the water were suddenly operating without coordination, without updated targeting data, and without confirmation that the broader architecture behind them was ready to escalate. Rear Admiral David Calloway, the strike group commander, had positioned his forces not merely to defend against a swarm attack, but to collapse the Iranian command structure the moment the first aggressive move was made. The Growlers were the scalpel. The submarine was a hammer held in reserve. The surface combatants were the visible shield. And behind all of it, the carrier air wing had a full strike package on 5-minute alert, configured for land attack with GPS-guided munitions, ready to put ordnance on the coastal batteries themselves if any of them went active. The Iranians were not facing a convoy defending itself. They were facing a prepositioned kill chain designed to escalate faster and more decisively than anything the swarm could generate. That was the visible response. But the real pressure sat underneath it. The destruction of the fast boats sent one message. The electronic silence of the Iranian coastal defense network in the minutes that followed sent another, far louder. It meant that the Iranian command structure had recognized in real time that escalation past the fast boat threshold would cross into a domain where the exchange ratio no longer favored them. Shore-based anti-ship missile batteries can threaten a destroyer. They cannot survive a coordinated suppression campaign from a carrier air wing operating with jamming support, real-time satellite targeting, and submarine-launched Tomahawks arriving from an axis the shore batteries cannot defend against. The geometry changed the moment the first Growler began transmitting. Would have been an asymmetric advantage for Iran. Cheap boats against expensive ships became an asymmetric disadvantage the moment the engagement expanded beyond the surface picture. The fast boats were expendable. The coastal defense network was not. The command and control infrastructure linking harbors, batteries, and headquarters was not. And the IRGCN leadership understood that the American strike group was not merely reacting. It was offering a choice. Withdraw, and the engagement stays at the surface level. Escalate, and the response moves to a level where Iranian losses become structural, not tactical. The boats burned on the surface of the strait for hours afterward. Merchant traffic diverted. Oil prices ticked upward on Asian markets before stabilizing. Diplomatic channels opened and closed in patterns that will remain classified for years. The footage released to the public showed what everyone expected to see. Warships defending themselves. Fast boats destroyed. A confrontation in a dangerous waterway. But that footage captured only the outermost layer. It did not show the submarine holding position beneath the thermocline. It did not show the Growlers erasing Iranian command links in real time. It did not show the strike packages loaded and crewed on the carrier deck, or the targeting officers aboard the cruiser maintaining firing solutions on coastal missile sites that never knew they were already inside the kill chain. It did not show the moment, somewhere inside an IRGCN operations center on the Iranian coast, when someone made a decision not to give the order for the second wave. That decision, the one that never became visible, was the actual outcome of the engagement. The boats that were destroyed were a cost Iran had already accepted. The escalation that did not happen was the cost Iran was not prepared to pay. And the architecture that made that calculus clear was never the ships on the surface. It was everything positioned beneath and behind and beyond them, invisible to cameras, absent from headlines, but present in every signal, every frequency, every vector that the Iranian command structure was monitoring that night. What determines the outcome in a place like the Strait of Hormuz is never just what you can see burning on the water. It is what you know is waiting in the dark, beyond the edge of the radar screen, already in position, already locked. And on that night, what was waiting was enough. If this breakdown gave you a deeper understanding of what actually drives these confrontations, consider subscribing to the channel. There is always another layer underneath the one the headlines show, and the next story is already developing. Hit the like button if this changed how you see the strait, and stay for the next one. It is going to go deeper.